Well, hey viewers, welcome back to the X Motorsports channel. Got here behind me is an F150 2010, and the customer complaint is that he parks the truck overnight and comes out in the morning and the battery's dead. So he purchased himself a new battery, thinking it might have been just a bad battery. Didn't fix the problem. Someone else had mentioned saying, well, it could be the alternator, so he went ahead and installed a new alternator. Let me show you this stuff. So, new battery, new alternator, still has the problem. So what I did is I hooked up the maintainer down here, the old Tornado 30,000, got the battery fully topped off, and I find that this thing has got a consistent of a little over an amp of continuous draw. Now what I've done is I had opened the driver's door, let all the modules fall asleep, because I noticed that once everything was up and running it was about 5 amps. And the only thing I've done so far is pull the lower cover, and what do I find? Well, let's break this guy out here, and everything being cold, what do you see there that looks a little on the hot side? Right there, that, and they got right there is about 60 degrees. No, maximum, yeah, about 60 degrees, right around there. Out of everything else, it's it kind of stands out, the sore thumb there, that it's got the problem. So what that is an aftermarket alarm with the remote start. I've also taken this and took note of how hot that instrument cluster is. Now, I don't know if that's a cause or effect, but we'll find out, because I went ahead and disconnected the alarm system stuff there, and the interesting part is, let's go take a look at the current. Yeah, we still have 1 amp of draw, so maybe things need to still shut down, fall asleep. I don't know. We'll give it some time and see what happens, and we'll come back and visit. Well, it's been 20 minutes since the last time I took capture of it, but you can see it's now just been a consistent 1 amp. That's the thing I said, cause and effect. So, got the top Don TC005 fired back up again, and there's the module, and you can see it's cold now, no longer being hot. Look what's in the background. Yeah, that guy is still awake. So is that the reason why everything is being turned on? So now I'm going to have to change my direction here a little bit. I may have to break out the scope and tie into the communications and see what other modules might be actually turned on, because that's not good. That's telling me right there that the clusters are still awake. Although I don't see anything else, like the radio. I know it was still turned on when they brought it into me, and all I did is turn the volume down, so I didn't turn it off. But it's the only thing that's still showing some kind of a heat to it. So it's quite possible it might be just one of those gone bad clusters. So anyways, like I said, I'm going to have to change up my diagnostic plan here and steer away from this, at least for the time being. Obviously everything's been long enough to where that should have fallen asleep, and it has not. So anyways, that's where we're at now with it. It's been sprinkling on and off here today, and honestly, it's just the weekend. I just came out here just to kind of get a little bit of a game plan going for what I might be doing during the week, and whether I continue with it more today or just save this for the work week itself, but I have a direction now, so that's it. Alright, curiosity's got the best of me, so I went ahead and tore that little cluster apart, or at least the surround and everything. I have not yet unplugged it to see. I did have to brought the Varus inside with me so I can visually see a little bit better. I did reset my amp clamp and put it back on there, and you can still see that we still got that same 1.1 amp, current draw there. But here's the guy, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and reach up inside there. There's only, look at this, just one connector. You can see it back there in that corner. Let's see if we can focus on that. Right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach up there and unplug it, and I'll try and see if I can keep you on the scope while I do this. If I can get my hand up in there. There we did it. So there, the cluster is now unplugged. And look at that. 0 on the current draw. Huh. Go figure. So, this guy apparently has the infamous internal issue. I've had to replace one of these already once before. Because such a thing, means every other one it would actually still, it would still light up every once in a while. This one it stayed, turned off, but obviously it's got a problem. Okay, so I got the cluster out, as I had explained. So here's a little bonus footage. I figured, what would happen if I actually plugged the alarm system back in there? So I did that, and you can see now, according to this, we got basically 1.1, which basically it's 100 milliamp. I may have to go in more detail than that to actually get a better view of it, if that's really the case. What do we have here? 0.07, so 70 milliamp. That's still a little higher than, kind of rule of thumb of 50 milliamp. I may end up doing is interrupting the battery and actually put another meter in between that, just to be a little more sensitive to it, because that low amp clamp works pretty decently, but when it gets down that that milliamps, I don't really trust it 100%. So I may do that, but anyways, it was just kind of interesting. I thought, well, what would happen if we did plug this guy in, just to see what would happen. So here, let's refresh those numbers and see what we got. See, it's got too much, it's just got a little too much noise. Let's put a filter on it, see if I kind of clean that up. So you see a little spiking going on there. That's interesting. Huh. What's the data part of it say now? Upwards to 200 milliamp max, but it still stays roughly around 70 milliamp. Let's hit refresh here again, see what happens. Yeah, it still kind of clocks up. So I don't know for sure what that spikes is. Maybe this thing's got maybe there's an LED somewhere on this thing that's pulsing an LED. Well, if it does, I certainly don't see it. Huh, interesting. I may venture into it a little later. But what I'll do is, since the battery's charged up right now, I'll just leave that plugged in, and we'll see what kind of a charge we have tomorrow. I'll do an actual battery test on it and see. But I thought this would be kind of interesting just to see, confirm, cover all bases here. The fact that, this aftermarket piece, I don't want it to be a, still a problem. Obviously we don't have that little over 1 amp draw anymore, which is what was killing the battery, no doubt. But still, that 70 milliamp is still a little heavy on what I prefer to see, anyways. But well, it's this will be day 2 after I pulled the instrument cluster out of this 2010 F150, and I had and hooked up just to see where our battery was at. I did a test, 540 cold crank amp. That's what this guy is. And you can see right there. Yeah, and it still has almost 12.8 volts. That's like perfect. And it still puts out, 631 is what it would supposedly be. But the true test was to determine whether or not it still had a current draw. So let's pull this guy back up here. Pull the amp clamp off and get this guy re-zeroed. And there's the 0. Put it back on there. There we go. So according to this, it looks like we're only about 50 milliamp, which a little higher than I'd like. I mean, but that's about maximum we would actually expect. Always kind of rule of the thumb was as long as it's below 50 milliamp, you were good. So at some particular point, though, I am going to put that cluster back in there, and I'm going to start testing some of the other actual inputs to it to determine whether or not is it something that's turning on the instrument cluster and keeping it on, or is it just, plain simple, a faulty cluster. So anyways, I just want to capture this a little bit. I got to fire this truck up so I can get some vehicles moved around, and then we'll come back to this thing a little later. Okay, so I went ahead and put my other actual amp clamp in between. I trust this a little bit more as far as milliamps. And you can see I got fortunate, it did not interrupt. It still shows as being 50 milliamp with the amp clamp. But with this in play, whoa, yeah, we're showing about 32. So 32 milliamp, pretty good. I mean, I was kind of hoping to see something more in the teens, 20, whatever. But I'm okay with that in a sense. I don't think that's going to be an issue as far as killing a battery overnight for sure. So I wanted to test all inputs into the actual cluster itself, and you can kind of see I pulled up the wire diagram here, and some of the things I was checking was the medium speed CAN network as well as the high speed network. Checking that, as well as down there at the bottom, the VP power, the white with violet. That actually goes up to a fuse that is gets power under when key is on. So I wanted to make sure that that circuit wasn't powered up as well, making it think that, hey, we're supposed to be awake. So what I've done so far when I've tested is I've checked the CAN networks, and both the medium speed and high speed are quiet. They are asleep. I moved on to, I even checked the PATs as well too. Figured why not. The only thing, and it was dead as well. So the only thing that I find that was kind of, peculiar to me was the Park Sense circuit. That was the one circuit I think I might have already mentioned how I wanted to check that with the shift interlock. Being he was having an issue with that shift interlock. So what I did is, you can see this, it basically goes nowhere. It says shift interlock. So let's pull up that interlock, and this is what I have here. So you see that green wire that comes from the instrument cluster, and you can tell when the vehicle's actually in park, you can see that wire, that switch will switch, and it's basically a ground circuit. So I back probed that wire up here at the cluster area, which you can see it's right there in green, and this is the signal I have. Now the odd part is, so that's only about where it spikes up is only about just 0.4 of a volt, so just under a half of a volt. But I mean, is this enough right here that kind of keeps the thing awake? It's quite possible. Here, let's just go live, and you'll see what it's doing is it's got these pulses, and see that it just jumped up again. So I think that jump up is what I've been seeing on the amp clamp when it was up there at the battery. Even though the cluster has been removed, I would still see similar spikes like this. I don't know if these little blips or anything that's really that big of a deal matter wise, because it's only 0.02. But when it does that, that's when I get a little concerned about, is that enough to wake the module or keep it awake? Because you see that's what it's doing in between the signal. And I still yet to see where there's anything in here like an LED or anything of that nature, but it doesn't really matter because I'm at the park circuit. That should be pulled to ground. So that's the part I don't quite... Yeah, so if that was truly a ground right now because it's in park, we shouldn't be looking at that. I'm curious though so let me increase the time here. Let's just do let's go 5 seconds. Why not? Kind of weird pattern there. wait for that big jump. So something's just bizarre there. It's not rhythmic. Let's just go live here again, and let's move the shifter around. I'm going to just move this guy around and see if it makes anything happen here. Maybe I'll put my foot on the brake. No, I'd have to pull it out of park. No, that's what happens when you touch the brake pedal. What the heck happened there? Oh, look at that. Wow. Now that was weird. Was it because of the brake? I'm looking in the mirror and actually I don't see the brake lights back there. Maybe they didn't come on. But that's kind of wild. So in order to pull it out of park, I got to put the key in there, and as soon as I do that, of course, it's going to wake everything up. Let me just pull the plastics and see where we're at with something in there, with as far as the park interlock, and see maybe I can manually, manipulate something with my finger to see if we can get this to stop happening here, and why there's no actual pull to ground. Because, if this diagram is 100%, I mean, realistically, this guy right here, that's a ground, and if that is in park, we should be having ground. Now, it's a possibility. You see there's a connector there. Wonder if we got a little corrosion going on, or something is happening there, interfering with something else. I don't know, something to investigate. So I'm going to tear this plastics apart, see what we got, and then I'll bring it back on when I'm at that point. Okay, so I moved the cover to the top of the steering column, and found this guy right here was just laying over here. So I'm kind of wondering, so basically that green wire has become an antenna. Now I don't know what exactly it was picking up, as I'm trying to duplicate that, put that wire back in here somewhere. I don't really see anything. My time base still at that 500 milliseconds, so half a second going across. But the odd part is I don't see that sweep going across there anymore. So I think, see, that's all it is. So me tied right here, what that essentially is, it's the green wire of this connector here. And let me show you on the diagram what I mean. So we're here at the cluster. This green wire is this one right here, but being that shift interlocked is no longer there, this is just an open wire. So essentially it became an antenna and it was picking something up. So this may explain why, if that cluster may still be turned on, is because this is no longer here, so it's an open. It never sees it being pulled to ground, thinking it's in park. Now, I don't know, being that was an antenna and it was picking up some weirdness here. If that was what was keeping the thing awake, I don't know. But reason why this was removed is because it wasn't working for him. Talked to the customer, and he said that, yeah, when he would have it, it didn't matter if the key was on and it was running, he put his foot on his brake or whatever, this would not unlock to where he couldn't pull it out of park, so he disconnected it. He got another one, apparently it did the same thing, so he removed it completely. And since he removed it, he'd also, after I talked about this, he said, that he noticed that the prindle on the cluster, as far as the park neutral, that part of it where it would have an indicator wouldn't light up anymore. So, and the reason of it is because I think how this works is that when you open it up, it no longer has that ground. Actually, it wouldn't matter because it just goes to nothing. So it's just an open. So I'm not sure why his prindle wouldn't show up then. Other than just communication, because it doesn't know if it's in park or what gear, maybe? Huh. See, this circuit just goes up here to And I'm looking at that violet. It goes up here to this smart junction box. So it's in a, a transistor right there. Thinking about that now. So yeah, even if you did remove that, it wouldn't make a difference. I was thinking at first that it would shift over and you would see this circuit right here with this, but it's possible. We're going to check this ground. We're going to even see if this ground even works, because if he was having problems where he pulled it out, tried to pull it out of park, but it wouldn't activate, then that may be because of the ground circuit, or it could be that the circuit up here, into that transistor, which would be then of course the smart junction box, which is that piece that's down in there, and that basically essentially like the fuse block. So we're going to test this ground and see if there's even actually a ground there, and that may explain why this. And then once we get that circuit back in there, apparently he doesn't have the solenoid in here, so I may have to just order one in so I can continue my test with it, and then we'll go from there, see what we get. Okay, so what I wanted to do was test and see if that ground wire for that interlock would actually be good. So I connected a light bulb in source, and I got both on it, so it should actually pull 2.4 amps basically. And if that's a decent ground, it should light that bulb up no problem. So what I'm going to do is, obviously the bulb is attached to ground, which should be ground, and I got my testers, which is positive, so I'll give it some power, and you can see clearly that thing has the ability to give good ground. So at least now we know that there's a good ground source up here, and we just need to figure out, so why would that interlock not work when he would apply the brake like he normally would. So that's where we're at. We'll keep on testing. Okay, so knowing the fact that we had a signal that comes off that interlock, that green wire, and it should be pulled to ground when it's in park, what I decided to do, just to kind of see what it would do with the signal, to kind of protect the circuit, because I don't know where exactly it's getting its power, but I put a light bulb in between, so I'm going to go into the green wire, goes through the light bulb, and I am supplying it at ground, which is coming from my source here, and you can see what it did. So it flatlined that to a 0, as it should. So my curiosity is that, if that was at a ground, will that cluster actually go to sleep now? That's something I will test, but I didn't want to plug that in, because what's going to happen is going to wake everything up. Instead, what I want to do is, I followed that harness that goes down, and where it actually plugs in at next is down here at the wire harness, right there. That would be the actual green wire. And when I disconnect it from there, that signal would actually go away. And my light just decided to die. So it's not something short between here and there, and even by disconnecting it, the signal would go away, and that no longer was, quote unquote, an actual antenna of anything. I mean, you can move it around, you might get some kind of a strange, signal, but it's not what we were normally seeing like this. So when we unplug this guy again, you can see our signal is still there. So what I'm going to do is, this is the harness. So up here is where the interlock is. It runs down that red wire, and this is that connector that's down there below. I am going to basically disconnect it. Actually, it won't even really matter, but I want to back probe the back side of the other wires that are there and see if I see a signal similar to what I see here now, to determine whether or not, is that wire shorted to get, to something, or did something get tied into it somewhere along? Because I was following the wire. It goes into the harness, but it goes out here to the end of the center of the dash somewhere, and then it comes back up and goes to the cluster. Okay, people, I'm getting close here. So what I did is I went back up here to where the green wire would be up here on the cluster itself. That's where I've had it before, and that was the the signal. But actually, it's a little less now compared to how it was. I still have, get the light down here. I still have that connector disconnected, and the reason why I moved my wire up there is because I was having issues with it staying in here while I was trying to test the wiring just to see what would happen. But when I move this thing around, just change it just a little bit, look what happened here. It actually increases the voltage on that, and all I did is took this and just gave it a little twist like that. Let's see if I can. It went away for a brief minute. A minute? Oh. But I find it kind of odd that it's able to change that, that voltage level a little bit, and all I'm doing is moving the connector around. So you can see now. I'm wondering if it's like somehow interfering, or like it's touching somehow internally, because it's, this is our wire that signal's coming from, and then our green wire right here should be an actual open. Oh, in fact I moved that purple one there and it went away briefly, and it actually increased. So let me I'm going to try and depin that, so that way that green wire is out of this connector itself, and we'll just see, is it the connector or is it down inside somewhere? Because now it's increased. It's actually bigger on the voltage than it had been, and all I did is just kind of move that thing around. Sorry, horrible, but see, there you go. So I'm not touching it, it's just sitting there by itself, and look at the voltage level on those spikes now. So let me go get this depinning tool here, and I'll pull that green pin out of there completely, and then we'll see what we got. Okay, so I still got the yellow trace that's actually pinned up here at where the cluster would be. I did depin. You can see there that green wire. I pulled it out of the connector. If it ever focus on it, maybe I won't. Not today. There you go. It's just hanging in the air. And then I tossed in another channel, which is the green one there, and I back probed that blue with orange, which is that signal, and you can see that they both, there's no doubt that that's where that signal is coming from. However, I'm just kind of wondering, since that wire runs right along with it, is it just one of those things where it's picking it up like an antenna? Like it's ghost voltage, basically. Because as I kind of squeeze and move the wire harness around, it does seem to kind of change its shape a little bit. I could take and push on the harness here a little bit. You can see it gets a little bit more, like I squeeze it together, and then I mean, it did seem like it dropped a little bit when I pulled that connector out of there, but I mean, obviously it didn't really go away, so I find it really odd. Maybe there wouldn't be necessarily much of a problem if the interlock was actually in there and obviously gave it a ground, like how I already proved it, with the light bulb in there. No idea. So at least now I know it's not like it's something that's, like corrosion or something that got built up in that connector itself, and it was, ghosting over to that harness, to that wire. But, with it not being grounded and it has these potential spikes, is that what's actually keeping the cluster on? Don't know. The only test that can happen is continue on and actually ground that signal like I had earlier with the test light, with the bulb, and then plug the cluster in. See if it actually goes to sleep. That's the only way. So that's where I'm headed now with it, and I'll bring it back on when I get something somewhere with it. Okay, so what I did is, so this is what actually would go to the the interlock. And this guy right here is the ground side of the interlock. I front probed since it's one of those really thin needles, so it just slips in there nicely. So I probed that green wire, which would go to the instrument cluster, which would be, this green wire on the end of the connector. So you can see now it's pulled to ground. We don't get any strange signals going on there. So I'm going to plug the cluster in, and then we're gonna move around. Actually, get the amp clamp out, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna monitor to see. Here, everything's plugging in. In fact, now we got a little flash going on there, but you can see everything's grounded. So what I'm curious to see is if will that cluster actually go to sleep now. So I'll leave it sitting up there. It's easy access that way, and then I'm gonna go with the amp clamp, and we're gonna see, if it still pulls that same, about 1 amp of current. So that's where we head next. As far as low amperage, plug that guy back on there. Yeah, look at that. Let me refresh this thing. So it still has those spikes every once in a while, and I'm not sure what exactly is still causing that, but well, we'll let it, we'll give it like an hour or so and see if everything falls asleep. I know that will fall asleep. My amp clamp will shut off in I think it's like 10 minutes or something like that. So we'll just see where it goes. Maybe by grounding that signal out, maybe it actually makes that cluster go to sleep, because what I don't see now is I don't see that 1 amp draw. So that's encouraging. Okay, it's quarter till 5. So it's been here for quite a while. It's still sustaining to be about 30 milliamp is what it's doing. Occasionally we still get that blip to where it increases the actual milliamp. So that's actually on, is that minimum right now? Let's see. Oh, there we go. There's live. I had to move the range because I was kind of curious to see, where it would go 100. See if that does it. Nope. Change the range. Let's do this. There we go. That should show it. There you go. 130. So we can put on a max, as far as a maximum, we can see what it does. And I've seen it go up to as much as about almost 135. That's the highest I've seen it so far. So you can see it's 130, but it's so quick. And I'm not for sure certain what exactly is causing it, because I don't see I don't see an LED in there. I mean, there is an LED that's in the cluster itself. Light. It's like a security light that blinks on and off. So, I mean, I don't know what module, if there's a particular module that's doing that, because if I recall, even if I go back and look, when that cluster was removed, it still would do that blip of 100 and something, whatever, and then go away. So, I don't know. Anyways, thought I'd capture that a little bit since we're getting kind of close to the end of the evening here, and kind of want to see where it's at. And I think what I'll do this time is I'm just going to leave the truck in here overnight, and then we'll see how it starts up in the morning, because that's technically the big complaint. By having everything plugged in, that the battery be dead by morning time. So we'll give that a try and see what happens. Well, here we are Monday morning. And it's been sitting now this way since Saturday when I last tested it, and it's been sitting at 30. This is the maximum. I have it set for maximum on milliamp, which is interrupted at the battery, and it's been sitting this way now for a maximum for the last probably 5 minutes. It's 9:46. See there? AM. Yeah, and I came out here and I turned it on. It was 9:40. So interesting. Hopefully, maybe that was the cure. Everything finally fell asleep. That'd be awesome. Anyways, just thought I'd capture this a little bit just to kind of add in there before I finish this thing up. Okay, for having this thing sitting for technically since Friday, I haven't started the vehicle up. I haven't put a maintainer on the battery, nothing. By giving that one circuit a ground, you know, that green wire that goes up to the cluster, it had a ground. I no longer had a power draw. So it kind of comes back to now questioning why his shift interlock was having an issue trying to get it to where he can pull it out of park. Unfortunately, I don't have it here, so I can't really test it. But the only thing I can test is the circuit itself. Now, lock this so I don't have you focus around my hand here. So this guy right here is the ground on that circuit for the interlock, which comes around over here to basically the ground side of my light bulb here. And then the yellow probe there, you see the green, that's actually attached to the blue with orange, which is what I would believe would be the power that would come from the smart junction box over there on the right kick panel, and it should provide power. This is going to basically take the place of a solenoid, the interlock solenoid, and then so if we turn the ignition on and I put my foot on the brake, theoretically that light bulb should light up. Testing that we did have brakes, then if we got a brake switch that's working, then that should actually light up. Here comes the true test here. Might need keys though. The true test. Will it start? Do we place our bets now? And we'll see if that light bulb lights up when I hit the brake. So everything's alive. Communication going on. True test. Starts up, no problem. Now, the other test. Foot on the brake, that light bulb should light up. And it does. That would allow me to pull it out of park if, we had an actual interlock there. So we know all of this is working like it's supposed to. So what happened? What are we missing here? Something happened. I think our problem as far as current draw has been figured out, but now I just need to try and determine and figure out what exactly happened with that shift interlock that caused him to take it out of there completely, and why the second new one wouldn't work. So I ordered an OEM Motorcraft. Should be showing up here later this afternoon, and once it's here, we'll toss that in there and then see what happens. And but I don't see how and why that wouldn't work, because as in previous tests, proved the fact that ground is good. It was just bad pin fitment up here for him on the second solenoid. We don't know. It'll be a mystery. Anyways, that's all I got for now. Alright, so we got our new solenoid in there, and the true test was to turn the ignition on. If you step on the brake, you'll see that thing will actually unplunge. There's a little, I'll zoom in on it. There's that little white disc right there. Watch this. Apply the brake, that comes up. Let off the brake, goes back down. And that's what will make a difference whether or not you can pull this thing out of park. See if I put on the brake. Look at that. And it works. So, I'm not sure if it was just because the old one just didn't work. I mean, it finally failed or what exactly, but either case, the other thing too is the little prindle as far as the park, it's now working as well too, so that's back. So anyways, just thought I'd capture this last bit, showing the fact that does work, and our current draw is gone. So there we go. Thanks for watching.